This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
That we said 2,999 bob.
Yes.
And I can take it with me wherever I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have to ever worry about being down.
Hajisasa.
Okay.
Because speed is equal, check. Now we're talking about Safaricom Home Fiber. That comes to you with what? With power backup. So that means if power goes off, you're sorted. You can still continue enjoying internet. Me, I will tell you one thing for a fact, Ndu. Me, I'm an ambassador for good life.
Oh,
I tell you that for sure.
Your Excellency, sir, we greet
yes,
you.
ambassador for good life. And with that means, if I am buying any internet, Safaricom Home Fiber for this matter, I want something that is reliable, that will give me the speeds I need, because I reckon that my uploads and downloads need to be good. You know, my Zoom check meetings, my WebEx meetings, my classes that I'm attending online, that whenever I'm streaming television, music, that I'm enjoying that easily and my internet is not buffering. Ambassador for good life, check. Now, when you're talking about the Safaricom Home Fiber, it comes in 3 packages, 3 packages for everybody. Everyone has been considered. We talk about 15 Mbps, which is the bronze package, and that is going for 2,999. The silver package, 30 Mbps, 4,199. Now, gold, 80 Mbps, 6,299. Same price, faster speed, Ndu.
Okay.
What else do you want?
Akuna.
Why do you pay more for less? Safaricom Home Fiber is priced just right for every home. Be on that Safaricom Home Fiber internet. You will not regret. Mimi nakwambia cause naitumia daily.
Nimekubali. I'm okay.
Kabisa.
So, now let me get you onto something else.
Tell me.
See, sometimes when you're just like broke,
Kabisa.
so you know.
It happens.
It happens.
It's in life.
Exactly. In life. Thank you, Waziri. And then sometimes you say, okay, so I need to then sort out myself real quick. And then you look at the options and somebody says, okay, no problem. We charge you like a 40%. You'll be like, Then somebody says, oh, this deal is so sweet. You want to get on in this. And you're like, hey, but it's there's too much month left on my money.
True.
Then I don't know how I'm going to be able to get it. Well, you know what? The boys and girls at Loop are saying, we got you. We understand this. So if you've not downloaded the Loop app, first of all, to join this conversation, go download the Loop app. It'll take you a minute, then come back. Are you back? Because here we are. You go to the Loop app, and the Loop Quick Loan says, you know what? We can give you up to 100,000 bob. Done. You don't have to line up. You don't have to bring collateral. You don't have to go and then now get an affidavit. You don't have to queue. You don't have to fill a form. You don't have to do any of all this other business. And then we can give you this thing at 7% interest. From
7%, you say?
That's what I'm talking about, man.
Wow.
We do it for you so that you can sort out these things that come at you every now and then because, senior life. So the Loop folks say, just get onto the Loop app. If you've not downloaded it, Google Play Store, Apple App Store, get on that. It's the color of this shirt.
Yes.
This is the color for the Loop app that
You're
looking for.
You're the ambassador for Loop.
Loop, see me. So you get onto that, get onto the tab. The tab that you're looking for when you're in the Loop app is the Grow tab.
Okay.
Get on the Grow tab and then apply for a quick loan. It'll tell you what you qualify for based on all of this other business that you need to do. So now, what I want you to do, because 5,000 bob is not a bad thing right about now.
It is good money.
It is. Take a picture, screenshot of that application that you've made on your Loop app and send it to us. That's all.
That's all.
Send it to us and tell us what you would do with that extra money if you got it, or if you're in the position where you need it right now. What is it that you need to catch up on real quick? Just tell us a little bit of a story. We'll give 1,000 bob.
The rest to achieve.
Easy peasy, kama?
Kamandizi.
Sawa. Let's go with that. So get onto the Loop app this morning, go to the Grow tab, apply, and then send us a screenshot of what it is that you've applied for, and we could give you 5,000 bob today, courtesy of Loop, because it's not just an app, it is a lifestyle. All right? Okay, so we're getting into a conversation, again, a sticky one. Who would have thunk it that now, almost 5 years later, after one morning, a girl runs across the street a few kilometers outside of Malindi and is talking to a motorcycle person and talks about the fact that her mother has been missing for some time. And where is she? Inside that forest. And then they started to double click and started to dig and started to ask questions about what is going on in Shakahola. And they said, what are we going to do about this particular situation? Before we knew it, more and more bodies began being exhumed from the ground. And we got to the point whereby the number of people who were asked to write their names on a list about their people who may have been missing got to 637. It was declared a national disaster by then Cabinet Secretary for Interior and National Administration Kithure Kindiki, currently the Deputy President. And Johansen Oduor started doing autopsies. And reagents were being looked for. And a man called Mackenzie then came into the limelight and he was arrested. And there was a Senate committee led by, Senate committee led by Danson Mungatana. They went to Shakahola. They went to see what was happening, came back and said, oh. Who would have thought that 3 to 4 years later, it's actually 3 years and almost 4 years now, that we would be seeing another situation where Kenyans are being asked to get into yet another cult of the same nature to now start be suffering at the behest of religion. Who would have thought? Would you have ever imagined?
Nope, because one would have expected that even with what was going on and the Senate committee having gone across the country, having gone to Kilifi and found out what was happening and further the discussion, religious institutions coming place to have their say on the same. One would have hoped that all checks and balances, all the gaps that existed would have been sealed. But here we are seeing the same thing happening in the same area, especially in an area where has been considered a security protected area. Even journalists are not allowed to go in, which begs the question, what exactly are security agencies doing, especially in Shakahola?
And if we go a little bit deeper into this, what is this over-dependence on then being able to get some comfort from religion that puts families at risk over and over and over again, puts children, husbands, wives in a position whereby they have to compromise their lives at the altar of religion? It's opening up a conversation that we definitely need to have. We will get into this to find out exactly what is going on. If this is huge cause for concern, we'll definitely double click on that into the next couple of days.
It is worrying.
It is worrying.
It is worrying.
It is worrying, and then it definitely demands our attention for us to have that conversation. So we'll be doing that because now Churchill Suba is here. He's the Executive Director of the Kenya National Civil Society Centre, and we're looking this morning into the fight for transparent and fair elections. Churchill, good morning.
Good morning.
We are glad that you are here. We weren't sure if you would be.
No, I was when Evelyn was calling us the main gate, so it's only that I couldn't pick the call, but I was nearby.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was confident that I would be able to make it.
Okay. Well,
unfortunately, not on time.
Not on time.
Yes, sorry for that.
Thank you for doing that all the same. We're looking into this conversation this morning, and even as you're here, as we welcome you to the show today, Dennis is going to share today's proverb. We'd love to get your interpretation of it.
And our proverb comes from Madagascar, an island off the African continent. And let's just go straight to it. Money without origin disappears like water in hand. How would you interpret that?
Money without origin, I mean, things that come that easy are easily expended without bothering much and worrying about the effort one made. So things that come cheap are easily lost because one does not become a little more careful in using them. And we have seen that a lot of that in Kenya. You remember, the empowerment that our current president and his former deputy, estranged though, did in Mount Kenya region from almost 2018 to 2022. Immediately they were elected, we had people taking to alcoholism because it was cheap money. They would easily spend it on drinks. And so people who are supposedly empowered, and it's glad I've spotted Honorable Nyutu in the compound here. You would agree with me that whatever is being called empowerment, based on the experience we had in 2018 to 2022, and what is going on now, might turn out to be, that water that is easily, evaporated from the hand because it comes cheap.
Easy come, easy go.
Easy go, exactly.
Well put.
Fantastic. We are already in what I like to call sometimes political silly season, where a lot of things are already happening. But one of the things that Kenyans would bay blood for is free and fair elections, no matter what the case may be. That at the end of the day, Kenyans want to be in a mood where they are satisfied that the process, well before the election date, when campaigning ensued, and that candidates made their bid at whatever level, in this case 6 of them, from the MCA, Member of Parliament, Women Rep, Senator, Governor and President, that their vote counted, not just because they stood up to vote, but because through the process it counted for something. And that number one was not going to be stolen, was not going to be, counted a lost ballot, was not going to be put in a bag somewhere that would be used for anything untoward. Kenyans are interested in a free and fair process, generally, one would assume. Maina Kiai in 2002, I beg your pardon, through his petition, more or less after the 2017 election, I beg your pardon, get my dates crossed there, essentially assured that from 2022 moving forward, there we go, that the result of an election would be determined at the polling station. And we look at some of these processes starting to come into play. How can Kenyans, even as we get into this conversation this morning, Churchill, be comfortable to know that you have an IEBC in place and that you have agents of a process in place ensuring that an election will be free and it will be fair and that the process would have been efficient?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, I'm quite aware of the Maina Kiai case and the Kelef. They were together with the Kelef of Muhuri. Secondly, I would brag that I'm an election expert because I've been an election observer with the African Union since 2008. A process that has taken me to about 28 countries in the continent and still counting. First of all, Kenyans will have to be careful and ensure that the legal framework, of course, the Constitution speaks to free and fair elections, elections that are verifiable, that are accurate, that are simple. If you look at Article 82, but a lot of that, Article 82, delegates the power to make electoral laws to Parliament, that is both the National Assembly and the Senate. And it is, as they say, the devil is in the detail. Kenyans must ensure, therefore, that the Elections Act and other regulations that under which the elections will be managed guarantee free and fair elections. And you, for a start, you want to be sure that elections will be conducted on the basis of universal suffrage. In other words, every adult who is of voting age is equipped with a national identity card that, first of all, identifies that person as a citizen, and then secondly, of course, registered as a voter. We have had instances and suggestions that, that a national identity card be the qualification and eligibility to vote. Of course, that is not what is in the law, but we recently had, leader of opposition Raila Odinga suggest that. Because once many bureaucracies are introduced, then that is how people who are eligible end up not, being able to vote because of, tactical voter suppression. Voter suppression is where, you make sure that even those who are eligible, not all of them get registered. And we had quite a lot of that in 2022, when a lot of the current Gen Zs who have reawakened and somehow become more politically conscious, were reluctant, even though they had IDs to go and register and vote. They did not have the confidence in the system. So free and fair elections, first of all, starts with election management body. In our case here, it's the IEBC, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. And because it is a new team, we are hopeful, one, that the secretariat that they have found in place will not run circles around them. Because one of the problems we have had is a secretariat at the IEBC that is more entrenched and more cozy to the establishment or the powers that be, that any new commission that comes in, is taken in circles. And so they do this every year in. One of the advantages we have this time is that we have an electoral commission that will only manage the 2027 elections. And I think at some point Kenya debated with that idea, that why can't we have a commission that only manages one election and goes. I think by default we have ended up having that. So this current electoral commission that is chaired by Mr. Ethekon will only manage 2027 and then begin preparations for 2032, but will not be in office by the time the 2032 elections are held. And so we have an election body that has come in without baggage. We want to believe that they'll be able to clean up the secretariat so that some of these shenanigans that, impede the realization of free and fair elections are addressed. Secondly is that the IEBC, and I remember seeing such a document, have what they call results management system. They have a whole document, stating stage by stage how to ensure that the elections are free and fair. And of course, when we talk of free and fair, we mean that the electoral process will be devoid of coercion, any violence, because you remember, there are certain voter segments of voters that would be thoroughly scared if they had, for example, the kind of violence we have had in the recent past. And so we want to believe that, all actors and stakeholders in the electoral process will stop campaigning by the time the campaigns will end, so that we don't have vigorous activities that may scare, would-be voters.
What would be the difference between what has been happening and then what would be envisioned to happen in 2027?
I think learning from mistakes that we have made all the way from 2013. You remember almost all the elections that we have had under the 2010 Constitution have been contested in court. And even though in some instances, for example, in 2013, the elections were okayed by the Supreme Court, we didn't have much. The Chief Justice then and his team did a job that they, to date, know that will follow them, to their graves. Justice must not only be done, but be seen to have been done. There is a sense in which the Supreme Court decision of 2013 left Kenyans hanging somewhere, Kwamata in our lingua franca. But in 2017, the Justice Maraga-led team did nullify the first round of presidential vote and made a raft of recommendations that ought to have been factored in the run-up to 2022 elections. Again, even in 2022, even though the Justice Martha Koome bench did give the green light for the presidential vote, they still made a number of observations. First of all, reaffirming that, the votes cast at the polling station are the ones that should be aggregated. Yet, Chebukati and team, may God rest his soul in eternal peace, had established somewhere, some place called Bomas, where the aggregation itself became more controversial. And he ended up visiting, homesteads of people who were trying to influence the election results. There were even allegations of asking for money, and that's not the kind of stuff. I was personally at Bomas and at Observer. And some of the things, immediately I set foot at Bomas, I said, this song we are being entertained with, this choir from Tanzania, why does the song ring a familiar bell? Because this song is the same one that the Kenya Kwanza used, President Ruto used during his campaign. How coincidental Is it that
song is a song.
The composers of the song that the president used are the ones that the IEBC, independent as it were, chose to come and entertain us at Bomas? Were we not being led through the garden path, you know?
Kenyans love the music.
No. I mean, if you see, there is a way in which things are choreographed. And immediately I set foot, I told people here, we are being taken for a ride. It's just a formality. We are waiting for results, an election whose results had been predetermined. And so I even raised it with the commission and I said, have we heard this song before? Is it not the song that was being bellowed by one of the political groupings during the campaigns? How coincidental that they are the ones that are entertaining us here at Bomas. And so Mr. Ethekon and his team must, earn the trust and confidence. Right now, people still have the hangovers of the IEBC, the Chebukati-led IEBC. And Chebukati did not quite go with that baggage to his grave. And so Ethekon and his team have inherited that baggage. It is upon them to rid themselves of that baggage and ensure that Kenyans, for once, will have trust and confidence in this IEBC. Because without that confidence, I can tell you, and of course we have already begun seeing all manner of statements. I saw a worrying statement, for example, from Martha Karua. She was addressing, Kenyans in the diaspora. And he was saying that even if Ruto appointed himself as the chair of the commission, the opposition, the united opposition will still win. Now that is worrying because in a free and fair election, it is the process that should be predictable, not the outcome. Now we had such things, statements being made. And I remember then Deputy President and Presidential Candidate William Ruto telling Raila that even if he appointed his own brother, Oburu Odinga, as chair of the IEBC, they would still beat him. Now that, again, worried me, and we saw it come to pass. In a free and fair democratic electoral process, it is the process that should be predictable, not the outcome. So now once somebody is sure of the outcome, no matter what the process is, then you can rest assured that election was not free and fair.
And when you talk about the process being important, and let's just relate it with the statements that we've had so far, that we will, even if the president does not get enough votes, we will add.
Exactly.
That even if the president akishindwa tutamwibia.
Yes.
And you hear these are statements that are being made by none other than the political players in the industry.
The very political players.
And you've had even the IEBC chair Ethekon addressing himself to the same in terms of allow us to do our job. We are the only ones who are mandated to deliver this. But then again, if you just zoom in on the statements being made by the politicians, what does this do to a common Kenyan with regard to having trust that IEBC will deliver despite the statements going around?
In fact, if you asked me, both sides of the political divide, because currently the divide is a little bit clearer. We are yet to see, people crossing the fence and so on. Both sides of the divide have made statements that undermine the credibility, one of the IEBC, and even the process. As you have rightly pointed out, we had this MP who, he got excited. And of course, now because of the intensity of the politics, everybody is trying to please the king. Everybody... every politician has become a reed dancer. They are trying to catch the eyes of King Mswati, and so people are saying all manner of things. Luckily for them, the code of conduct, we have not reached that point where the IEBC will develop a code of conduct that is binding, and so they cannot at this point in time be held to account. But you can imagine the psychological warfare that one, first of all, will have on people's perception of the IEBC. And it is important that the chair and his team did speak to this early enough and warned them against such statements. Perhaps it is time that those kind of statements that we have cited should be an example and an indication that we may want perhaps to have the code of conduct a little earlier. Because if they are allowed to do things as they seem to do freely, even the campaigning, the court pronounced itself recently that all these premature campaigns, and we are seeing it on both sides of the divide, the united opposition has devised a strategy of going to church. And instead of dispersing, they only go to church in a place where they have an intention to hold impromptu public meetings. And we have seen, in the last 2 weeks, running battles with the police. Of course, even as a human rights defender, I have a problem with what they are doing because the law is very clear that, you need to notify. And nothing stops them from notifying that, we'll be attending church here. And after that, we'll be having, a meeting with the people at this shopping center and this other. If that is done, then we would avoid all this drama that we are seeing. But politicians, being what they are masters and mistresses of drama. We saw, for example, the MP for Naivasha being summoned because we as human rights defenders have said, instead of abducting people, summon them. But the MP was summoned and just ignored. What was she waiting for? The drama. And they thrive on that. And so even as we would want to defend the right of people to assemble, we in the human rights sector would urge them, to do the right thing and just entice themselves to drama, because that is where, perhaps politics becomes more exciting.
What's the guarantee that if a code of conduct were to be established, re-established, refreshed, what's the guarantee that folks would actually abide by it?
It's about enforcement. Look at our city county here, dating back to when it was a city council. We have laws. We have laws that say don't smoke. There are, areas where you should smoke. We no longer remember that even in, eateries, bars and social places should have a place that is zoned off for that purpose. What do we have? Lack of enforcement. We have, anti-littering bylaws. In fact, not bylaws. Bylaws used to be made by the local authorities. Now county governments make laws. But is that being enforced? No. We have those smoking zones that are not even zoned. So people are smoking everywhere. And there are people who have gone to open shops, small to small shops around those same smoking zones. And so what is lacking is enforcement. And if the Ethicon team were to enforce, any single one, just catch any one of those people and use them as an example to others, I can assure you that everybody else, because one of the conditions is that if you violate them, you can be disqualified. But as long as politicians know that they can buy their way, that, the IEBC will look the other way, and even if they summon you as the National Cohesion and Commission regularly does, there's nothing that come of it, then people will, ignore those laws and treat them as, mere suggestions. So the solution is enforcement, and very strict, firmly, but in accordance with the law and regulations.
Yeah, when you talk about enforcement, especially when with the statements that have been given, you find that IEBC would depend on other agencies to be able to help with enforcement, right? So here we have the NCIC who would summon you, but you've not seen anything so far to this moment. You'd expect that police themselves would move in without even being prompted, because that is statements that would create disorder among the public. But as you look at IEBC chairperson having spoken and the other agencies being silent, it creates a picture of a disjointed unit that ought to be working together. And that in its own self does not only give the politicians an opportunity to continue spewing the statements, but even members of the public start forming perceptions and even lines, clearly demarcated lines on how they think about IEBC. So then how do we move forward and ensure that everyone in these agencies work together in ensuring that the credibility of IEBC is upheld?
Yeah, I think there is some multi state agency institution that normally comes together when elections are around. We have had, in the past where the IEBC works together with the NCIC, it brings together the Office of the Attorney General. We have had the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, and even as an agency within the Judicial Service Commission. They normally create, the pool of courts, the election courts that are normally established for this purpose, bring together even the magistrate level. If that institutions work together and seamlessly, and said, we must be firm but fair, so that there is no perception that only one side is being victimized and the others is being left to go scot-free. I know one of the reasons why the opposition are trying to do, for example, those impromptu meetings is that they'll say the president does it every Sunday, so let us also do it. But you see, the president can purport, like he did last Sunday in Kariobangi, purport to be, going to inspect, the excuse is inspect development projects. And again, the president, as long as he's holding that office, operates at a different pedestal. There are certain charges you cannot prefer. But we'd want the opposition, to abide by those rules. So what we are saying is that at times it is very tricky, because if, for example, Honorable Nyutu, for example, that I saw in Muranga last Sunday, say, how come you have allowed the president to... but again, being president, you don't expect, the president to notify the police that I'll be in this, because he himself moves with the police wherever he goes and so on. So there is an element in which incumbency also get abused, and more so towards elections. And people who are incumbent and in the office already take advantage of their being in office to do certain things that they know that the opponents will not be able to do, or certain barriers, may be placed on before them, and therefore make them unable to do those things. So we want to see that multi-agency team established early enough. In fact, I would suggest to Mr. Ethekon that going by what we have had in the recent past, we may want to, extract the judgment that was made by the courts recently and serve it on every sitting politician and every aspiring politician, so that we do not have this, campaign 2 years before. In fact, slightly higher, longer than 2 years. Because in so doing, we'll get up distracted, we'll end up, smearing the IEBC itself with a lot of baggage. They'll be distracted from their core mandate. They're supposed to help us with review the, constituencies for National Assembly and ward elections. Remember, that has been pending, in fact, overdue. We don't know whether they'll do it. But for that to happen, we do not like, it may not happen within an enabling environment where we have, politicians crisscrossing everywhere and polluting, the minds of people and making them look as if, the elections would be held the next day.
Do you think the IEBC is independent?
Yes and no. Election management bodies, by virtue of the manner in which they are established, guarantee some independence. But you see, there are people who will tell you that the fact that, 3 names are forwarded to the president, and he decides on one to be the chair, again makes the people doubt whether, there is this true independence. The fact that 9 names are forwarded for members of the IEBC, and then the president has the latitude to pick 6 and leave out 3, again, has cast always doubts. But you see, as one of those who wrote the Constitution, we were saying that at some point, there must be somebody who makes the appointment. There must be somebody who makes the appointment. And if you look at the manner in which the election management body is appointed, almost all the 3 arms of government play a role. In fact, we can say, in theory, that all Kenyans play a role in the establishment of the IEBC, because there is involvement of political parties, there is involvement of the Public Service Commission, which is established, of course, to serve the general public. There's involvement of, the executive, and, then there is a panel that represents different segments of society, including the Law Society of Kenya, the Interreligious Council, and so on and so forth. So through that process, you have people who are interviewed, and the public has a role to play in making available any information, adverse or positive, that they may have on those people. So if people are finally shortlisted, then it is believed that through that rigorous, interview and vetting process, that there are people who are credible enough, and that gives them some independence. Then they are forwarded the names are forwarded to the president, who then selects a chairperson from a choice of 3 and 6 from a choice of 9 and forwards them to parliament. That then again does another round of vetting. And then the public again is invited. Then when they are finally vetted by parliament, the names are taken back to the president, again elected by the people. And then the president forwards them to the Chief Justice, the judiciary, who then swears them in. And we have always had, the Chief Justices in the past, telling them how best to deliver, giving them the best advice that is available, that they need to remain strong. But of course, we all know that despite the fact, the theory that we have about the 3 arms of government being doing checks and balances, we know the one that tips the scale, the executive, with all the resources, instruments of coercion, instruments of persuasion, and so on. And so we have had this challenge that perhaps the sitting president, and especially if he's going to defend his seat, has always used and so that particular issue has always been outstanding. But you see, if the election management body was to be appointed by somebody else, it is only done so in states that are described as a failed state, where the UN comes in to help, and the UN machinery is entrusted with the facility, because nobody trusts each other. But in our system, despite our challenges, I don't think we are yet, in a situation where we can be described as a failed state, because a failed state is where, there is no law and order. But what we know is that for us even to have sat here and rested assured that when we finish this program, we'll all be able to disperse and reach our home state safely, means that, Kenya is not yet there. Of course, I've had politicians talking about failed states. Some of us who have observed elections in environments that could be closer, not even failed entirely, but could be described as almost failing, know what a failed state is. And I can tell you that ours is very, very far from that description.
Jurisdictions where elections are held that don't have an electoral body, but seem to then be able to hold what would be considered, for the most part, free, fair, and efficient election?
Exactly. The American election is conducted by
volunteers.
By volunteers. But there is the state, every state, each of those states is in charge. And people trust the system because institutions have shown over the years that they can deliver. So in America, you don't have an election management body as such. But there are certain institutions and departments in each state that ensure that those elections are conducted in accordance with the law. And people have trust in those. And many other countries in Europe. But in our situation here, we have institutions that are very weak, whose delivery and performance is dependent on the personality of individuals that occupy them. So we worry more about who is going to be the IEBC and not about the IEBC itself, because the IEBC itself, is compromised to the core. We have staff there that cannot be entrusted, and that's why even the courts, have since ruled that, the power of any constitutional commission resides with the commissioners and not the staff and so on. So we hope that in the fullness of time, and at some point in the not so far future, we'll have a situation where Kenyans can trust institutions, and that those institutions will be able to earn the trust of Kenyans, so that whether the person in that institution likes the face or does not like the face of a particular candidate, they'll say, this is the outcome. I may not like it, but this is the outcome. Now, that's the situation they have in America and in many other countries in Europe. In Africa, we saw the Gambia, elect with pebbles. They go pick pebbles in the beach, and they count. It is those pebbles that they count. Of course, one, it might be possible to do that, and I've seen them do that, because one, the population is not big. But two, again, the fear of what would happen, during some of the dictators they have had in the past. I think anybody would shudder at, offending whoever is in charge and whoever is expecting to win. But ideally, our constitution talks about elections that are simple. And for me, doing elections with the pebbles is the simplest, method you can have. Because you cannot, change.
Yeah.
Here we have people doctoring results. Yeah. We recently saw even in court, during, the inquiry into Rex Masai's death, where even records of who signed for the gun have been changed.
Yes.
And so on and so forth. And so when we have such mischief being perpetrated by people who have been entrusted by the public to perform certain duties, I think it boils down now, one, to the integrity of the Kenyans themselves, and therefore, by extension, to the institutions that we have established.
You see,
but I will tell you that there are indeed countries, one of them, United States of America, one of the largest democracies in the world, that does not has no election management body, and that depends on every state and its public service to deliver free and fair election. And the rest is, for political parties is volunteers and so on and so on.
There's a question that Ndu asked you with regard to is IEBC free and fair, and the ultimate response from you was yes or no. And then again, there is the aspect of the executive having all the powers and control and has a potential of tilting the scale. But then here we find ourselves with a commission that is rightfully so in office, and the responsibility, first of all, is to earn trust of Kenyans. But IEBC, as we look at it today, has a window of opportunity to change how Kenyans look at them, or to stamp the authority that they are free and fair. And that is through the delimitation of boundaries that is left, the by-elections that is coming in. So in terms of Ethicon and team and how they would handle these processes that are right ahead of them, how critical is that on how Kenyans will view IEBC after especially the by-elections?
Precisely. The two exercises that you have pointed out. One is the by-elections that are forthcoming. In a matter of time, once the writs are issued, declarations of vacancy, because those that were issued earlier have since expired. And so the speakers of the different assemblies, whether it's the National Assembly and the different county assemblies, or where certain wards are also vacant, will have to issue writs afresh. And the law requires that by-elections be conducted within 3 months of the issuance of those writs. So the real test will be on how the IEBC, the Ethicon team, will conduct itself. And Kenyans will be looking out whether they are firm but fair, fair but firm, in ensuring that those elections, pass the test of being seen as free and fair. The second one, of course, is the more controversial one, the delimitation of boundaries. As you know, the requirement by the law is that those boundaries be reviewed, after, a period of time, 10 or so years. And it has not been reviewed since they were established under the 2010 Constitution. Now, the boundaries, first of all, to be reviewed, because I've seen people salivating with the possibility that the boundaries of counties. No, that does not fall within the mandate of the IEBC. The boundaries that will be reviewed are constituencies, the 290 constituencies, and the wards, only. Those are the boundaries that will be reviewed. And again, it will be interesting because the IEBC is fairly guided, well guided, first of all by the Constitution, and then there is a factor that they have to consider. So numbers will go up depending on which populations have grown more and which ones have grown less, and so on and so forth. But those boundaries will be reviewed and possibly renamed, and that is where the contestation was. I can tell you, when you are writing the 2010 Constitution at Bomas in 203, 204, at some point everybody wanted their district, because what we used was the District Act of 1992. And we said, this is the lived experience of Kenyans. Kenyans have lived in these units before. And because we do not want to create, disharmony and do no harm to people who have had relationships, they have had common markets and so on and so forth, we said, let's go by the District Act. And the District Act had even a schedule of where the boundaries, lied. And so today I get worried when I see counties fighting over boundaries, because our formula was very simple. Let's use the District Act as at that time. But then there were those who wanted that we use the District Act as it were in that year when we were at Bomas. After Kibaki had increased, and Raila, of course, the districts to 74. And so there were people saying, no, let's go to 74 so that we bring services closer to the people. We said, one, those counties have to be economically viable. So going by what has been done in the past, and we have been complaining about them, that a lot of them have been for purposes of political reward and of course, gerrymandering, the usual manipulation of boundaries so as to tilt, the electoral units in one's favor, then we cannot be the same people embracing them. So we said, let's go back to the districts as they were. The IEBC will have to be imbued with the wisdom of Solomon to be able to achieve a boundaries review, because Kenyans have learned to relate those boundaries with the resources. Remember the way we allocate resources based on population, based on, culture, and so on and so forth. And whenever you see, funds being disbursed to counties, we have always seen, Turkana, for example, among those getting the largest share. As to whether it is used for the benefit of the people is something else. But we have seen, resources being allocated on the sheer expanse, and then the poverty levels and so on, and many other factors. At some point, they were also giving it on account of whether a country has established certain institutions that are required under the County Government Act. For example, the County Budget and Economic Forum. And it was being used as an incentive to encourage counties to establish, county audit committees, for example, and so on and so forth. That, and then, laws on public participation. So what did counties do? They got a consultant who developed one or two, then the rest did a cut and paste. And it was just meant to be seen to be compliant, yet they did not believe in those frameworks. And so public participation remained, a tall order for most of them, because they did not actually philosophically believe in them. And we have seen a number of them trooping to Makueni County, as if Makueni is running on a different law. It's the same County Government Act. But because of lack of political will, and whenever they have an opportunity to eat public resources, they organize a trip to Makueni, as if Makueni is in mass. Makueni is in Kenya. It is the political will that they have there that has seen them, implement devolution as it was meant to be. And because of the foundation that Professor Kivutha Kibwana laid in Makueni, subsequent governors, including Mutula Jr., has had to contend with the foundation, because the people are so alert that you don't go there telling them stories. They know what is supposed to happen, and so on and so forth. Okay. Similar to what Nyerere, for example, did in Tanzania, laying a foundation for nationhood. It's something that subsequent presidents have not been able to play around with. And so we would wish to see a situation where, every other county picks it up from there. But this IEBC, the Ethicon team, has a job at hand. The litmus test is in the by-elections. The litmus test is in the manner in which they'll review those boundaries, because they review them, they must. I think they are overdue, because some counties, a number of constituencies, several in Mount Kenya region, the whole of Taita Taveta County is supposed to have only 2 constituencies if you went by the population. So 2 of them will be lost. And so they must be addressed. Somehow, the entire county, the whole of Taita Taveta should be 2 constituencies. And so where do you draw the line? We know the Taveta, the main communities there are Taveta and the Taitas. So will a portion of the Taitas allow themselves to be merged with the Tavetas? And that's where the controversy will be.
Indeed, necessary to have these conversations. I want to thank you so much, Churchill, for being here this morning to shed some light on all of that. It'll be interesting in the days ahead to see then how all of this then comes together for the establishment of truly free and fair elections into the future. Thank you so much for joining us on this conversation this morning. We continue with the Situation Room tomorrow morning. Have a good day. It is 10 a.m.
This is the Situation Room. the only way to start your day.